I didn't think I was a pet person. Not the way people say it like it's a lifestyle. I liked animals, sure. I'd stop for a dog on the street. I'd pet a cat if it didn't act like it owned me. But I didn't plan my day around an animal's feelings. Then my sister called one afternoon and asked if I could take her dog for a few weeks. She said it like it was nothing. She said it like she wasn't moving in with a boyfriend who didn't want fur on his couch. The dog's name was Pepper, a black mutt with a white blaze down his chest and a face that looked like it had been put together by a committee. One ear flopped. The other tried to stand up and gave up halfway. He was 12, maybe 13, the kind of dog that smelled like warm dust and old blankets, the kind that leaned against your leg with his whole body, like he was trying to make sure you didn't forget he was there. I told my sister no at first, not because I didn't want him, because I knew what a few weeks meant. It meant the dog was mine now. Just until things settle, she said. Until what settles? My life, she said, and laughed like it was a joke. I lived alone in a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. 1 story, 2 bedrooms, a patchy yard. When I bought it, I liked the quiet, the kind where you can hear your own footsteps. I took Pepper because the alternative was a shelter, and even I'm not cold enough for that. The first night he paced the living room and sniffed every corner like he was checking for something. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He just moved slow, nose down, then stopped and stared at the front door, as if he expected it to open. I sat on the couch with my phone and watched him. After a while, he came over, put his chin on my knee, and looked up at me. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't begging. He looked tired. I scratched behind his ears. He sighed and let himself melt onto the rug. That was the moment he became my dog. The next morning, I took him for a walk around the neighborhood. I hadn't been the morning walk type either, but Pepper had his routine, and it was easier to follow it than fight. The neighborhood was one of those half-old, half-new places. Some houses had been there for decades, with big trees and sagging porches. Others were fresh builds with clean siding and landscaping that looked like it had been installed with a stapler. People nodded from their driveways. A woman jogging slowed down when she saw Pepper and smiled. A guy watering his lawn waved. Then there was the older man across the street from me. He stood on his porch with a coffee mug like it was part of his body. He watched us without waving. I nodded at him anyway. He didn't nod back. Pepper sniffed the grass and walked with his tail low, but not tucked. He was interested, alert, like he was trying to learn the place. Halfway down the block, he stopped and stared at something in the ditch. It was a dead squirrel. I know that sounds normal. Squirrels get hit by cars all the time. But this one wasn't on the road. It was in the ditch, away from the curb, and it looked arranged, not like a kid had put it there, not like an animal had dragged it. It was laid out on its side, paws together, like it had been placed carefully. Pepper didn't try to sniff it. He stepped back. "Okay," I said, mostly to myself. "We're not doing that." I tugged the leash and we kept walking. At the end of the block there was a little park with a couple benches and a trash can that always overflowed. A man was there with a golden retriever. The retriever was young and bright-eyed. The man looked like he hadn't slept. "Morning," I said. He gave a thin smile. "Hey." Pepper and the retriever sniffed each other. The retriever wagged like it wanted to be friends with the world. Pepper was polite but stiff. "Pepper," I said. "Charlie," the man said, nodding toward his dog. We stood there for a second, two strangers making small talk because our dogs had started it for us. "You're new?" he asked. "I've been here a while." "Dog's new," I said. He looked at Pepper and his eyes softened a little. "Old guy." "Yeah," I said. He hesitated, then said, "Keep him close. Don't let him wander." I laughed lightly because that's what you do when someone says something that feels too serious for a sunny morning. "Why?" I asked. He looked away. "Just, people have been finding stuff. Animals." I thought of the squirrel. "What kind of stuff?" I asked. He swallowed. "Cats, rabbits, things like that. You know." "I don't," I said. He looked back at me, and there was a hard edge under his tiredness. Not roadkill, not normal. A woman across the park called his name. He tugged on Charlie's leash. "Anyway," he said and forced a smile. "Nice to meet you." "Yeah," I said. "You too." He walked away fast. Pepper stared after him. When we got home, I tried to shake it off. People find dead animals. It's nature. It's life. It's unpleasant, but it happens. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about the word he'd used. Stuff. Stuff meant details he didn't want to say. I told myself it was probably teenagers. Kids do cruel things sometimes. A cat disappears. Someone finds it later. People talk. Stories grow. I went to work, answered emails, joined meetings, did the normal adult thing where you pretend nothing can touch you. Pepper slept in the corner of my home office. Every so often he'd lift his head and look around, then settle again. At lunch I took him out back. He trotted to the fence line and sniffed. The backyard wasn't fully fenced when I bought the house. I'd put up cheap chain link on the sides, and the back had a wooden fence that belonged to the neighbor behind me. Pepper stopped at a knothole in the wood and pressed his nose to it. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't move. I walked over and looked through. The yard behind mine was empty. No furniture, no kids' toys, nothing. Just grass and weeds. The house itself looked lived in. Curtains drawn, a car in the driveway. But the yard looked like someone had given up on it. Pepper kept sniffing, then let out a low sound in his throat. Not a growl exactly, more like a warning. "Hey," I said, and pulled him gently away. "Leave it." He came, but reluctantly. That afternoon I got a text from my sister. "How's Pepper?" I stared at it for a long time before I typed back. "He's fine. He's mine now, you know." She sent a laughing emoji and didn't answer. I should have been mad. Instead, I looked down at Pepper, curled up on the rug, and felt a weird protective anger that had nothing to do with my sister. That night I made dinner and dropped some chicken pieces into Pepper's bowl. He ate slowly, chewing like he had time. After he finished, he walked to the front window and sat there, staring out. He didn't do it like a dog waiting for someone to come home. He did it like a guard. "What are you watching?" I asked. He didn't turn. I walked over and looked out. The street was quiet. Porch lights on. A few cars parked. The older man across the street still on his porch. Coffee replaced with something else. Maybe beer. He was watching my house. Not in a casual neighbor way. Not like he happened to be looking. His head was angled straight at my window. For a second, I wondered if he was just staring into space. Then he lifted his mug slightly, like a slow salute. My stomach tightened. Pepper's ears shifted. I drew the curtains. I'm not someone who scares easily. I've watched horror movies and rolled my eyes at the dumb choices. I've walked alone at night without clutching my keys like a weapon. I've lived in cities and dealt with weird people. I'm not naive. But there's something different about being watched from across a quiet street by someone who doesn't smile. I went to bed and tried to ignore it. Pepper slept on the floor next to my bed. He didn't usually move at night. Old dogs don't have the energy. But around midnight, I woke up to the sound of his nails clicking softly on the hardwood. I opened my eyes and saw him standing by the bedroom door, staring at it. "Pepper," I whispered. He didn't turn. I lay still, listening. At first there was nothing, just the low hum of the fridge, the faint noise of a car far away. Then I heard something else. Not footsteps, not a knock, more like a scraping sound. Light, brief, like something brushing against the outside wall. Pepper's body went rigid. My heart started doing that ugly fast thing. I sat up slowly and reached for my phone. The room was dark, but I could see the outline of Pepper's head as he stared. The scraping came again, farther away this time, toward the living room. I thought about getting up. I thought about calling someone. I thought about how stupid it would be to walk into a dark house chasing a sound. So I stayed in bed and listened. After a minute, the sound stopped. Pepper didn't move for a long time. When he finally did, he came back and lay down. But he didn't relax. His eyes stayed open. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined it. Houses make noises. Trees scrape. A raccoon could have gotten on the porch. Still, I walked through the house and checked locks, even though I knew I'd locked everything. The back door was locked. The front door was locked. Windows closed. Everything normal. Then I saw the side of the house, outside the living room window. There were scratches on the siding. Not deep gouges, not something dramatic. Just thin marks, like someone had dragged something sharp across it. I stared at them for a long time. Pepper stood beside me, leash in his mouth, ready to go outside. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice steady. "We're going." I took him around the block, and I noticed things I hadn't noticed before. A missing cat poster on a telephone pole. A second one, faded. A third one, newer, with a photo of a tabby and a phone number written in shaky marker. Someone's fence had a section repaired with fresh wood, like it had been broken. At the park, the trash can was tipped over. Something had been dug through. A woman with a small dog walked past me quickly, clutching the leash tight. "Morning," I said. She didn't answer. When I got back home, I found a flyer stuck under my windshield wiper. It was printed on white paper, cheap ink. Neighborhood watch meeting. Community center, 7 p.m. Underneath in smaller letters, animal incidents/safety. I stared at it. Pepper sniffed it and sneezed. I almost threw it away. I don't go to neighborhood meetings. I avoid committees and circles of plastic chairs, but the scratches on my siding were still in my head. So that evening I went. I left Pepper at home. I didn't like it, but the community center didn't allow dogs. He watched me put on shoes and grab my keys. When I walked toward the door, he got up and blocked it, standing right in front of me. "Pepper," I said, "move." He didn't. I felt a stupid wave of guilt. "Come on," I said, and stepped around him. He followed me to the door and stood there as I locked it. His eyes were fixed on me like I was walking into a trap. I drove to the community center and parked under a flickering light. Inside, there were about 20 people in a room that smelled like old carpet and coffee. Folding chairs in a half circle. A table with a sign-in sheet no one was using. At the front, a woman with short hair and a clipboard was talking. "We've had multiple reports," she said. "Pets taken from yards. Found later. Injured." She hesitated at the last word, like she didn't want to say it. A man in the second row raised his hand. "Just say it," he snapped. "Found dead. We all know that." Murmurs ran through the room. The woman tightened her grip on the clipboard. "Yes. Found dead." Someone else spoke up. "We called animal control. They said it's not their problem." A woman in a hoodie said, "We called the cops. They said there's no proof it's a person." The man who'd snapped earlier leaned forward. "Because the cops don't care unless it's a human." A few people nodded. The woman with the clipboard said, "We're here because we're going to make them care. We're going to document what's happening. We're going to watch our streets. We're going to keep our pets inside. And if anyone sees something, you call it in. You don't confront. You don't chase. You call." I sat there, feeling like I'd walked into the middle of something I didn't understand. A middle-aged guy with a baseball cap spoke. "It's not animals doing this," he said. "I've hunted. I've seen what coyotes do. This isn't that." The room went quiet. He looked around, eyes tired. "Whoever it is, they're practicing." A woman near me started crying quietly. The clipboard woman swallowed. "We don't know that," she said. "Yes, we do," the man said. "Come on. You've seen it. It's not random. It's not hungry. It's not nature. It's a person. Someone enjoying it." I felt my skin prickle. Another person spoke from the back. "My neighbor's dog disappeared. 2 days later they found it by the creek. Like it was left there." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. The silence filled the blanks. I thought of the squirrel. I thought of Pepper sniffing the fence. The meeting went on. People shared stories without details, like everyone had agreed not to describe too much. Names were said. Streets. A pattern. Pets taken from yards. Pets found later, not far, sometimes in plain sight. always someone else finding them. Kids, joggers, and lately there were notes. A woman with glasses spoke up. "We found a note on our gate," she said, voice shaking. It said, "If you can't keep it safe, you don't deserve it." A wave of anger moved through the room. Another man said, "Someone wrote something on our mailbox too. Not that, but something." The clipboard woman asked, "What?" He looked down. It said, "You'll learn." My throat went dry. I sat there thinking about Pepper at home, about the way he'd blocked the door. Toward the end, the clipboard woman said they'd asked for extra patrols. The police had agreed to keep an eye out. People laughed bitterly. Someone suggested cameras. Someone suggested lights. Someone suggested carrying weapons. The clipboard woman cut that last one off fast. "Don't turn this into a war," she said. "That's what they want, whoever they are." When the meeting ended, people stood in small clusters, talking in low voices. I was heading toward the door when the older man from across the street stepped into my path. Up close, he looked older than I'd thought, late 60s, lean. His skin had that leathery look of someone who'd spent a lot of time outside. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're the one with the black dog," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I said, and immediately regretted answering. "Old dog," he said. "Yeah," I said again. He tilted his head. "He's not from around here." "No," I said. "He's my sister's." He nodded slowly, like he was filing that away. "What's your name?" he asked. I hesitated. "You don't have to be scared," he said, and smiled again. "We're neighbors." My mind flashed to his face in the window last night. The salute. "Mark," I lied. He didn't blink. "I'm Harold," he said. "Harold Quinn. I've lived on your street a long time." "Nice to meet you," I said. He reached out like he might shake my hand. I didn't take it. He let his hand fall back, still smiling. "Keep that dog inside," he said softly. "People like to test boundaries." I forced a laugh that sounded wrong in my own ears. "Yeah, I will." Harold leaned closer. His breath smelled like coffee and something sour. "You hear anything last night?" he asked. My stomach dropped. "No," I said quickly. "Why?" "Just asking," he said. This place used to be quieter. I looked around at the other neighbors, at the clusters of people. None of them were looking at Harold. It was like he existed in his own bubble. "I should go," I said. He nodded. "Sure. See you around, Mark." I walked out fast. In the parking lot, I saw the man from the park with the golden retriever. He was leaning against his car, smoking. He looked up when he saw me. "You live on Maple?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. He flicked ash. "Across from Harold Quinn?" My mouth went dry. "Yeah," I said. He exhaled smoke and stared at me. "Watch him," he said. I blinked. "What?" He shook his head. "Just watch him. He's weird." "Weird how?" I asked. He shrugged, eyes darting toward the community center door like he didn't want anyone to hear him. He's always watching. He's always around when something happens, and he doesn't have any pets. I almost laughed again, but it didn't come. "You think it's him?" I asked. The man's face tightened. "I didn't say that." "But..." He cut me off. "Don't say it. If you say it, it becomes real, and then you have to do something. And I don't have the energy for that." He crushed the cigarette under his shoe. "Just keep your dog close," he said again, echoing his earlier warning. Then he got in his car and drove away. I drove home with my hands tight on the steering wheel. The street looked normal when I pulled in. Porch lights. Quiet. The kind of place you'd tell your friends is safe. Pepper was at the front window when I walked in. He stood up and wagged his tail once like he was relieved but not excited. "Hey," I said, kneeling to pet him. "Sorry." He licked my hand and then pressed his nose against my chest. I held him for a second, feeling his ribs under his fur. He was thinner than I'd realized. That night I set up an old camera I'd used for video calls. I aimed it at the front porch through the window and set it to record motion. I checked the locks twice. I told myself I was being responsible, not paranoid. Pepper stayed near me all evening. When I went to the kitchen, he followed. When I sat on the couch, he lay at my feet. Around 10, I took him out back to pee. The air was cold and still. Pepper trotted out, sniffed, did his business. Then he froze. His head snapped toward the fence line again, toward that knothole. His body went stiff. I looked where he was looking. The yard behind mine was dark, but there was a shape near the fence. At first I thought it was a trash bag. Then it moved. Slowly it rose, like someone standing up from a crouch. My throat closed. The shape was a person. They were on the other side of the fence, close enough that if they leaned forward, they could see through the knothole. I couldn't see their face, just a dark outline against darker yard. Pepper made that low sound again. I grabbed his collar and pulled him back toward the house. The person didn't move. They didn't speak. They just stood there. I backed toward the door, fumbling with the handle, Pepper's nails scraping on the deck as he resisted. The person on the other side of the fence took a step closer. The fence creaked softly. I shoved Pepper inside and slammed the door. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the lock. Inside, Pepper whined once, a short sound like he was angry. I stood there, back against the door, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No scraping. Just silence. I waited until my heart slowed down enough that I could breathe normally. Then I went to the kitchen window that faced the backyard and turned off the lights, pressing my face to the glass. The yard was empty. The fence line was empty. The yard behind mine was empty. I stood there for a long time anyway, staring into the dark, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I'd seen. Pepper sat beside me, his eyes fixed on the fence. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I called the non-emergency police line. I told them I'd seen someone in my neighbor's yard at night, near my fence. The dispatcher asked me if they'd tried to enter my property. "No," I said. "Did they threaten you?" "No," I said. Did they damage anything? I don't know, I said, frustration rising. She sighed like I was asking her to solve a math problem. Okay, she said. We can send someone to do a drive-by. A drive-by? I repeated. Yes, she said. Is there anything else? I wanted to scream. No, I said. I hung up and stared at my phone. Pepper rested his head on my foot. I put on my coat and went outside. Across the street, Harold Quinn was on his porch. He raised his mug again. I didn't look away this time. I stared back. He smiled. Then he lifted his other hand and pointed. Right at Pepper. My body went cold. Pepper barked once, sharp. Harold's smile didn't change. I pulled Pepper inside and shut the door. I stood there shaking, the image of Harold's finger still in my head. I told myself I was being ridiculous. He pointed at my dog. People point at dogs. But his finger hadn't wiggled. He hadn't waved. He hadn't gestured like cute dog. He'd pointed like you point at something you've selected. That afternoon I got a call from my neighbor behind me. I didn't even know his name. The number was unknown. Hi, a man said when I answered. This is Dan. I live behind you. Sorry to call out of nowhere. My stomach tightened. Hi. There's something in my yard, he said. His voice sounded strained. I think it came from your side. What? I asked. I don't want to describe it on the phone, he said quickly. Can you come look? Maybe it's your dog? Pepper was asleep at my feet. No, I said. Pepper's here. Dan swallowed audibly. Okay. Can you still come? I should have said no. I should have told him to call animal control, or the cops, or anyone. But something in his voice made me grab my coat. I'll be right there, I said. I left Pepper inside, even though he tried to follow. I shut him in the laundry room with a bowl of water because I didn't want him running out into whatever was happening. He barked when I closed the door. I'll be back, I said, trying to sound calm. He pressed his nose against the crack at the bottom. I went out back and walked along the side of my house to the gate that led to Dan's yard. His yard was the empty one I'd seen through the knothole. In daylight, it looked worse. Tall grass, leaves piled against the fence, no patio furniture, no toys. Dan stood in the middle of it, pale. He looked like a man who'd been startled out of his life. Thanks, he said when he saw me. I didn't know who else to call. What is it? I asked. He pointed toward the far corner near the shed. At first I didn't see anything. Then I did. It was a cat. Gray and white. Stiff. I stopped walking. Dan's voice shook. It wasn't here yesterday. I don't have a cat. I swallowed hard. The cat was placed near the shed, not thrown, not dragged, like it had been set down, and next to it was something else, a collar, red with a little tag. I didn't want to go closer, but my feet moved anyway. The tag had a name on it, Milo, and a phone number. I looked at Dan. He looked like he might throw up. "I didn't do this," he said quickly, like he thought I might accuse him. "I know," I said. On the shed door, someone had scratched words into the wood, not neatly, not carefully, but clearly. "Keep them in." Dan's eyes watered. "Who does this?" he whispered. I didn't answer, because I already had an idea. Not a clear one, not a solid one, just a shape in my mind. Someone watching, someone choosing, and that shape had a porch across the street. Dan grabbed his phone. "I'm calling the cops," he said. "Good," I said. He dialed and turned away, voice high. I stood there, staring at the cat. I don't know who Milo was. I don't know what kind of life he had. But I could picture a kid somewhere, or a woman, or an old man, calling a name into the dark and waiting for a sound that never came. I looked around Dan's yard. The fence between our yards was old and worn. At the knothole, the wood was smoother than the rest, like hands had touched it a lot. Dan finished his call. He put his phone in his pocket and rubbed his face. "They said they'll send someone," he said. "They said to not touch anything." "Okay," I said. We stood there in awkward silence. Then Dan said, "Do you have a dog?" "Yes," I said. "Keep it inside," he said, voice flat. "I'm serious." "I know," I said. I walked back to my house, heart pounding. Inside, Pepper was barking in the laundry room, furious. I let him out and he rushed into the kitchen, sniffing the air like he could smell where I'd been. I knelt and grabbed his face gently. "Listen," I said, like he could understand. "You can't go out alone, okay?" He stared at me and licked my nose. I laughed, a short sound that almost turned into a sob. That night the police came. 2 officers, young, bored. They went into Dan's yard and looked at the cat like it was an inconvenience. One took photos, the other wrote notes. They asked Dan if he had enemies. Dan said no. They asked if he'd seen anyone. He said no. They asked if he had a camera. He said no. They shrugged. When they came to my door, they asked if I'd seen anything. I told them about the person behind my fence the night before. They asked if I could describe them. I couldn't see, I said. They asked if I knew who lived behind me. Dan, I said. They asked if I knew anyone who would do something like this. I thought of Harold. I thought of the man at the park saying, "Don't say it." I thought of what it would mean if I said it. "I don't know," I said. The officer nodded like he was relieved. It was easier if I didn't know. He told me to keep my doors locked. He told me to call if anything happened. He told me to be careful. Then they left. After they were gone, I stood at my front window again. Harold was still on his porch. He watched the police cars drive away. Then he looked at my house. Even through the glass, I felt his gaze like pressure. Pepper stood beside me. Harold lifted his mug again. Then he set it down. He raised his hand. And this time he didn't point. He made a slow motion with his fingers, like he was petting something, like he was stroking an animal. My skin crawled. I stepped back from the window. Pepper growled. I pulled the curtains shut. I spent the next day doing things I told myself were normal. I went to the grocery store. I bought coffee. I bought dog treats like I'd done it my whole life. I came home and installed motion lights in the backyard, the kind that flood the area with bright white light. I put a lock on the gate. I checked the shed door even though I never used the shed. I set up the camera in the back window, aimed at the fence line. Pepper followed me around the yard, tail low, ears back. When I hammered a screw into the fence, he jumped at the sound. "Sorry," I murmured, more to him than anything. As the sun went down, my nerves felt like raw wires. Pepper ate dinner and then lay in the living room, eyes open. I sat on the couch, the TV on but muted, watching the camera feed on my laptop. Nothing moved. The backyard was still. The fence line looked harmless. Around 9, my phone rang. It was my sister. "Hey," she said brightly, "just checking in." I swallowed a mouthful of anger. "Pepper's fine," I said. "Good," she said. "He's not being too much trouble?" "No," I said, because it was easier. "Great," she said. "So listen, I might need you to keep him a little longer." I laughed, sharp. "Of course you do." "Don't be like that," she said. I stared at Pepper, his head up, listening to my voice. "I'm not being like anything," I said. "He's here. I'm taking care of him. But you should know something." "What?" she asked. I hesitated. How do you tell someone over the phone that you think a person might be hunting pets? How do you say it without sounding insane? "There's stuff happening," I said finally. "In the neighborhood. People's pets." "What kind of stuff?" she asked. "Bad stuff," I said. She laughed lightly. "Like what? Coyotes?" "No," I said. "Not coyotes." She went quiet for a second. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. "Just keep an eye out. I'm keeping him inside." "Okay," she said, voice cautious now. "Well, call me if you need anything." I almost told her to come get her dog. I didn't. After I hung up, I went back to watching the feed. At 10, the motion light in the backyard flicked on. I sat up straight. The camera feed showed bright light flooding the grass. For a second, nothing moved. Then a shadow crossed the fence line. My heart slammed. Someone was there. They were on the other side of the fence, just out of the camera's direct view, but their shadow moved along the wood. Pepper stood up and started barking. The barking was loud, sharp, nothing like his usual quiet. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My fingers shook so hard I hit the wrong numbers twice. Pepper barked and barked. The shadow stopped. I finally got through. "What's your emergency?" a woman asked. "Someone's in my backyard," I said. "Are they inside your house?" she asked. "No," I said. "They're behind my fence. They were out there last night too." "Do you see a weapon?" she asked. "I can't see them, just a shadow," I said. Pepper's barking changed. It became a low, steady sound, like he was warning, not panicking. "Stay inside," the dispatcher said. "Do not go outside. Officers are on the way." I stayed on the line, staring at the camera feed. The shadow moved again. Then it lifted, as if the person had raised their arm, and something dropped over the top of the fence. It landed in my yard with a soft thud. Pepper lunged toward the back door. "Pepper!" I shouted. I grabbed his collar and held him back. He struggled, snarling. On the camera, the object lay still. I leaned closer to the screen. It was small. It was dark. It had fur. I felt my stomach twist. The dispatcher's voice sounded far away. "Sir, are you still there?" "Yes," I said, but my voice came out thin. The shadow on the fence moved away. The motion light stayed on, illuminating the empty fence line. I didn't go outside. I didn't open the door. I didn't look closer. I just held Pepper and watched the camera feed until the police arrived. When the officers came, they walked through the backyard with flashlights. I watched from the kitchen window, breathing through my mouth. One of them picked up the object with gloved hands. He held it up. A rabbit. I couldn't tell if it was dead. I couldn't tell anything except that it had been dropped into my yard like a message. The officer looked at me through the window, and his face tightened, finally showing something like concern. He spoke to his partner. His partner nodded. They went to the fence and shined lights over it. They called out. No answer. They walked around to the gate and tried it. Locked. They climbed the fence. I watched them disappear into Dan's yard. Pepper pressed against my leg, trembling. A minute later, one officer came back, climbing over. He looked frustrated. "He's gone," he said through the door when I let him in. "Who?" I asked. The officer paused. "Whoever it was." He glanced around my kitchen, at Pepper, at the dog bed in the corner. "You need to keep this dog inside," he said. "I am," I snapped. "I was. That's why I called." He held up his hands. Okay. We're going to take a report." I nodded, jaw tight. While he wrote, he asked questions. Did I have enemies? No. Had I seen anyone suspicious? I described the shadow, the person by the fence the night before, without saying Harold's name. The officer asked if I had cameras. I showed him the feed. He watched the clip of the shadow and the rabbit dropping. His face didn't change, but his eyes did. "That helps," he said quietly. "Will you do something?" I asked. He hesitated. "We'll patrol," he said. "We'll keep an eye out." The same words. I felt like screaming again. After the officers left, I sat on the floor next to Pepper and held him. He licked my hand once, then rested his head on my thigh. His eyes were wide. I felt sick. Not just because of the rabbit, because of what it meant. Someone knew I had a dog. Someone was close enough to my house to toss something over my fence. Someone was testing how I'd react. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification. The camera had detected motion again. I opened the app with shaking hands. The feed showed my front porch. The porch light was on. And on the step, right outside my door, there was something. A small envelope, white, neat, placed carefully, like it belonged there. I stared at it. Pepper let out a low whine. I didn't move. The motion notification came again, this time from the camera aimed at the street. I switched feeds. Across the road, Harold Quinn stood at the edge of his yard. He wasn't on his porch. He was closer. He stood under his own porch light, hands at his sides, and he was watching my front door. Not the street, not the neighborhood, my door. I felt something in me tighten into a knot. The envelope sat on my step like a dare. Pepper growled, low and constant. I didn't open the door. I didn't go outside. I didn't touch the envelope. I turned off the lights and sat on the floor with my back against the kitchen cabinets. Pepper pressed to my side, and I watched the camera feed until my eyes burned. Harold didn't move for a long time. Then slowly he raised one hand. He didn't wave. He didn't point. He held his hand up and made a small gesture with his fingers, like he was pinching something tiny, like he was holding a leash. Then he let his fingers open, like he was dropping it, and he smiled. I sat there in the dark, stomach hollow, and I understood the simplest part of what was happening. Someone had decided my dog was part of a lesson. And if it was a lesson, it wasn't meant for Pepper. It was meant for me.